everyone, how are you? I hope you are doing great and welcome to the part 5 of our Java basic series. Now in our part 5 we are going to discuss about variables and data types. Now if you haven't watched our previous parts yet, please make sure you watch them, right? Now variables and data types are the basic things in every programming language, not only Java, in every programming language variables and data types are the basic thing and these are the easiest to learn. So let's not spend much time learning this. Let's quickly end this. Okay. Now variables. What are these variables? Variables are nothing but which stores our data temporarily. Right? For suppose in a website we will register, right? While registering we will give our details. We'll give our first name, last name, email, password and mobile number. Now where these all get stored? These all get stored in database, right? That's a permanent storage. But during processing or temporarily, the data is stored in the variables. Let me explain you with a quick example. You all know Amazon website, right? Everyone is familiar with that. Now, if you want to log into the Amazon website, it asks for two things. One is email, another thing is password. It asks for these two things, right? And we also have a submit button here. Now, let's think you have entered some email and also your password, right? Now when you click on this submit, it will get submitted and this email and password will get stored in our database, right? It is the basic thing, right? The email and password will get stored in database when we click on submit. But where these values are get stored while we are entering this information? After entering this information, after clicking on submit, these values are getting stored in database, right? Now, where will these values get stored during entering this information? Right? Those are called variables. During entering this information, this will got stored in a email variable. During entering this will stored in the password variable. Means this is a temporary storage. Only temporarily we are storing this in password and temporarily we are storing this in email. After clicking submit, these two will get in the database, stored in the database. That is a permanent storage, right? This is variables. This is what variables call. You are storing it in a temporary way, right? Or we are storing it when it's processing. These are called variables. Now variables are broadly classified into three types, right? Before getting into them, let's be explain with another example. For example, we have int a is equal to 5. Okay, int b is equal to 2. Now int result is equal to a plus b. Now what will be the result? 5 plus 2 is 7, right? The 7 will get stored in the database. But during the addition, during the processing, during the addition of 5 and 2, where will this get stored? This will get stored in the result variable. Now result is a variable. So that is variable is called. During processing, for temporary storage, we use variables. After it's executed, it will store in database. Right? These are called variables. Now variables are broadly classified into three types. What are those? The first thing is instance variables. The second thing is local variables. And the third thing is static variables. Okay. Now I hope you're already familiar with instance variables and local variables, right? What are instance variables? Which are stored inside the class. Right? What are local variables which are stored inside the methods? Right? Now what is static variables? Static variables is a different concept. I will definitely explain it in my upcoming videos. Right? Now let's quickly revise what are the static variables and what are these local variables are. Okay. For suppose I have a class and the class name is car, let's say. Okay. Now inside this class I'm declaring some variable like private int 4 and other variable I want to declare private string. Sorry, I didn't declare variable here. Private int n is equal to 4. Okay. Now private string s is equal to Java. Okay. Now what are these things called? What are these things called? These things are called as variables, right? Because no, these things are variables, but these are called instance variables because we are storing it inside the class. We are storing it inside the class named car. As we are storing it inside the class, these are called instance variables. Now, what are local variables? Local variables are the variables which will get stored inside the method, right? For suppose public int add is a method name. I'm declaring one variable as int n1 here, and also I'm declaring it here as int a, another variable. Now this a variable, this n1 variable are called local variables because we are storing it inside the method. For suppose we have another method, let's say public int served, and I'm declaring other variable as int n2, and here I'm declaring other variable as int b. Now here the b variable and 2 variable are also called as local variables because we are storing it inside the method. Now please remember other thing. The instance variables which we are declaring inside the class can also be used inside this method. Okay. For example, what I declared here I declared private int n is equal to 4, right? Here n is the variable. So that we can use this n variable, the instance variable, inside the add method and inside the sub method. Okay, so that what is there, the variables which we are declaring inside the class can be stored inside the methods, means can be used inside the methods, but it's not true vice versa. For suppose we have declared a variable a right here, this cannot be used outside this method. The variables which we declared inside the class can be used inside the methods add and sub, but the variables which we declared inside the methods, for example, for suppose a and b, these cannot be used outside these methods. For example, a cannot be used outside this add method, and b can also be not used outside this sub method. Okay, now these are variables. These are the basic thing about variables. Now let me explain you data types. Okay, I want to introduce to the data types. Data types are nothing but we have data types are broadly categorized into two types. Okay, first thing is primitive data types. The second thing is primitive data types. There are two types of data types. One is primitive and other thing is non-primitive. Right? Now what are this primitive and what is this non-primitive? Primitive is nothing but the regular variables with the regular data types we are using. Those are nothing but int, float, double, like this. Okay, int, float, double, char, and these are called as primitive variables because these are already existing data types. Non-primitive data types are data types which the user creates them. These non-primitive data types are not already exist, but the user create them according to the logic he will develop. Okay, now let's discuss what are this primitive, what are this non-primitive. Now in primitive we have five things, right? Int, float, double, char, boolean. Now int also we have some things. Okay, those are called byte, short, int, and long. Now what are these? You are getting confused, right? These are nothing but size. For example, we have byte. It is of only 1 byte. Okay. Now if we take short, it is of 2 bytes. Now if we take int, it is of 4 bytes. Okay. Now if we take long, the long is of 8 bytes. Now what is this 1 byte, 2 bytes, 4 bytes and 8 bytes? For example, I want to declare a variable, right, with int. For suppose it is a bigger number, I can use int a is equal to 1000. Okay, int a is equal to 1000 because it's a bigger number. I'm storing it in int. For suppose it's more bigger, it's very larger, then how can I store it? like keyword long L is equal to, or suppose it's 1 lakh. We have to use L as suffix. If we are using long data type, after the value we need to use L as suffix. This is mandatory. Okay. Now this is about int. In the int we have byte, short, int, long, and we have to use this accordingly. What is the value? If the value is bigger, we need to use long. If the value is in the average, we have to use int. If the value is shorter, we can use short. If the value is much shorter, we can use byte. Okay, this is about the int variable, int data type. Now we have float, right? Let's discuss about float. What is this float and double? Float and double are almost same. Okay, nothing but we'll use this to store decimal values. For suppose we have 1.1, we have 2.1, we have 5.5. If we have these decimal values, we will store it in float and double. For suppose we have a integer one, int a is equal to 5. As 5 is an integer, it will getting stored in int variable. But we have 5.5. Then where to store it? It will be stored in double. Double D is equal to 5.5. It is correct. Okay. Now by default we use double in Java. To use float, we need to use float f is equal to 5.5. Both double and float will store decimal values. But what is the difference between them? Double is of 8 bytes. Means if we have larger decimal values, we can store it in double. If we have shorter decimal values, we can store it in float. Okay, but by default we use double in Java, right? Now another difference between double and float is, if we want to declare a variable with double, we can declare as double D is equal to 5.5. But if we want to declare a data type with float, if I declare float f is equal to 5.5, that is totally wrong. If we want to use float, we need to use f as a suffix after the value, right? This is how we can use double and float. Now let's move to char. What is this char? This char is nothing but character. This char should be stored in single quotes. Okay, char c is equal to a. This is how we store it. Character can be only stored in a single quotes. Okay, right? The character can also be numbers. For suppose char b is equal to I can store 2 also, but these should be stored in single quotes, right? I think you got it. This is nothing, this is char. And the final thing we have is boolean. What is this boolean? Boolean is nothing but it's a statement which says it is true or false. That is boolean. Okay, boolean, boolean. It states whether it is true or false. This is boolean. Okay, now these are the data types and these are the variables. Now from our next class, let's get more deeper into the Java concepts. Okay.